Namaskar and welcome to this special event that is dedicated to honoring the life of Mahatma Gandhi. Two of his weapons, if one should call them, were the weapons of truth and nonviolence. And often people today would not believe that there walked amongst us a man who used these two things to move an empire. We know what Gandhi meant when he said truth and nonviolence are his weapons. But in the current times that we live today, how relevant are they? What influences do they have today on the current world? We bring in a special curated dialogue with three special people, all working in different fields.
To introduce our panelists today, first we have Tushar Gandhi, a socio-political activist of peace issues involved in advocating and spreading Gandhian values and principles to address the problems and dilemmas faced by the humankind and the contemporary world. He also is the great-grandson of Mahatma Gandhi and is the managing trustee of Mahatma Gandhi Foundation.
Thank you, Tushar, sir, for agreeing to this interview and welcome once again.
Thank you so much.
Our second panelist today is Sister Jayanti. Sister Jayanti is the additional head of the Brahma Kumaris, and she is also the representative of the Brahma Kumaris to the United Nations in Geneva. A spiritual leader and teacher for over 50 years, she is a pioneer advocate for the spiritual basis of caring for the earth and a key presenter at COP climate change conferences since 2009.
So, greetings of peace to you, Sister Jayanti. Thank you for coming again.
Thank you, my privilege.
Our third panelist today is Avni Varia. She's engaged in research, documentation, and promotion of India's culture, indigenous textiles, and non-textile crafts and art. Through her initiatives, she weaves together educative and research-oriented design travel experience aimed at safeguarding the heritage of India's arts and sustainability.
Avni, a warm welcome to you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. I'm humbled to be here today.
Before we start our official conversation about what it really means, the values of truth and nonviolence, what it means for people, planet, and for peace, we have a small visual for you, a visual round of questions for you. There are certain visuals that often connect us to Gandhi, things that remind us of him. So to start with, we would like to see these pictures on the screen and think about a word or a phrase that comes to you when you see these things that are related to Mahatma Gandhi. I would like to start off with Tusharji. What does this visual remind you of about, and what values comes to your mind that Gandhi resonated when these images connected to him come to you?
Well, I think the first word that came to my mind when I saw this visual was Pathfinder. Because when you see the stick, you think of it as a support. But if you take it in the spiritual sense, it is also a guide because it precedes you when you're walking. It explores the unexplored before you reach there. And anything that does that, to me, is the pathfinder that leads you onwards. And so for me, that visual really, the first word that came to my mind was pathfinder.
Thank you, Tusharji. That was very beautiful. Sister Jayanti.
For me, it sort of represented the Salt March and the determination of spirit and the high integrity of Mahatma Gandhi in starting off on that Salt March and so many others joining him. And that was really a declaration for peace and nonviolence.
Very beautiful. Thank you. Avniji, what did that signify to you?
For me, when I saw the visual, I think the first thing came to my mind is Ekla Chalo. Because I think whatever you decide in your life to do, you are the first person and you are the last person to walk through that entire path. People might join you, people might crowd around you, they might fade out, fade in. But the whole thing is that, yes, when you decide upon something, you keep walking. And also the stick meant to me are the values when you are walking to that path.
Wow, beautiful. We have the second set of things that you can have a look on the screen, and you can possibly share the same thoughts about what this thing reminds you about.
I think the first word that came to my mind when I saw the image was creation, because that is where the whole ideology was created from, with the spinning wheel as its core. And so for me, it symbolizes the creation of a whole philosophy.
Very beautiful. Thank you. Sister Jayanti.
On the physical level, of course, it symbolizes self-sufficiency, which was so important. But on the spiritual level, it reminded me of the eternal cycle of birth and rebirth and the amazing philosophy of Bharat that Mahatma Gandhi exemplified.
Very beautiful. Thank you. Avni ji.
For me, I think whenever I have been seeing Charkha for last 8 years, one thing that comes to my mind is a tool that definitely is very important for India in terms of self-sufficiency, the kind of population we have, and the way we are ignoring the value of human hands and physical labor. I think for me, it always brings that visual in front of me when I see Charkha, that how can we utilize to the best the human potential in India.
Thank you, Sister Jayanti. We would like to start with you. What does that signify?
Well, again, on the external level, time, but I think also on a spiritual level, the value of each moment and how precious each moment of life really is, and to use my time in a worthwhile way for a worthwhile cause, so that breath and thoughts and time are connected as my treasures.
It signified eternity, that everything is eternal, it goes on. We are the temporary phase in that eternity, but time never stops for anyone. You may be one of the greatest persons of your time, but the time always moves on. So it is the purest form of eternity.
When I see that particular device, I always think of Mahatma Gandhi, because I've always resonated it with him. Yes, as Sister and Tusharji rightly mentioned about the eternity of time and value of time, I think for me it's lately when I see this kind of an object, I feel that it's important to be in the moment, because the way I have lived my life, thinking a lot about past and planning a lot about future, we really miss the moment. So for me, it resonates with the be in the moment and do whatever is required now is more important.
Thank you. And I believe just to start off this conversation, as much as I thought this is going to be an icebreaker, there is so much depth that is coming out of it. And I see where this conversation is headed. Thank you. We have one more visual for you. So let's have the visual, please.
Yeah, so when I see this particular pair of spectacles, I think I can always relate it with Gandhi Ji, and I think it's something that one term that comes to me when I see this is classic. There are a lot of things in the world, in terms of objects, which are classic. You don't really need to dabble with design and development and do certain things. So I think for me, it's classic, evergreen.
Thank you. Tusharji, the last time Bapu's glasses were on a display somewhere, so many people flocked to have a look at what it meant and how much they wanted to see it up close and front. So what does that signify to you?
Clarity of thought. It glasses are for vision, and vision leads to the development of thought. So to me, they symbolize clarity of thought.
Beautiful. Thank you. And lastly, to Sister Jayanti.
The total simplicity of his life, it's absolutely functional, not a single thing connected further, just functional simplicity. And on a spiritual level, of course, the far-sighted vision, looking ahead into the future and being able to see an India which was self-reliant, a self-sovereign.
It's a coincidence, but the four images that you showed me, they come together in the graphic behind Avni Varia. This wheel of the charkha and the vertical stroke of the lathi and the hands of the clock, and of course the lens of the glasses, all come into the peace symbol on the wall behind of the view of the vendor. As the pictures progressed, I kept linking them with that graphic behind you.
Wow.
Very beautiful. Thank you. So just to end the first round, we have a last image, and I think this would be a sweeping image. Let's have a look at that.
Swachh Bharat, a clean Bharat, that of course, but also to me it represents the cleanliness of spirit, the cleanliness of motive and intention, in which Gandhiji didn't want something for himself personally, but his life and everything he had was dedicated to the betterment of Bharat. And so a clean intention, motive.
When I saw it, the first thing that came to my mind is to do things on your own things, like simple things like keeping cleanliness around you, wherever you are living or work or traveling. Just keep clean and do it on your own. Why wait for somebody else to do? Like you throw garbage and you want somebody else to clean. You mess it up and you want assistance to do your cleaning of your messing up. So I think doing things on your own and keeping things clean in the physical world, that's something came to my mind. And yes, as a sister very nicely presented it, or I don't have that elaborate vocabulary, but yes, cleanliness of your thoughts and your mind.
Bapu always laid stress on means being as important as the ends. And to me, the broom signifies the cleanliness of the means and the importance of that cleanliness in achieving a clean end. It may be just a tool to clean, but it also is a moral benchmark for the means being as important. So for me, it sort of signifies the purity of the means for the goodness of the end achieved.
Thank you so much. It was very interesting to listen to your ideas about what each thing signified for you. There is as much as a cohesion between your ideas, and yet there is an individual thought that stands out. Thank you so much for that. And just to move on, truth and nonviolence. Many people consider these are two pillars that entire life of Bapu Mahatma Gandhi stood on. Just to start off the conversation, how do you define truth and nonviolence? What do they mean for you? How do you define them for yourselves?
For me, truth is the most inconvenient thing, because generally what happens is these days we have the tendency of accepting only the convenient truth. What is convenient to me is truth. If it is inconvenient, then that's not truth, and I'm not going to accept it. So I think today the most important thing is to realize that truth is not always convenient. And sometimes truth may be very inconvenient for you, but it still has to be accepted as truth. And that is what all great people, not just Bapu, but all great people who lived their lives by those virtues, uh, portrayed to us through their lives. And many a times we have seen that they've even finally harmed themselves in sticking to that truth. And but that is what is required. We cannot, what we accept or practice as convenient truth is actually not truth at all. And that difference has to be understood and respected. We become practical a lot of times. And nonviolence for me is the only sustainable way of life, if you look at it. Because many a times we make a convenient definition of nonviolence being where there is no conflict, where there is no bloodlet. But then there is the violence of thought, there is the violence of prejudice, there is the violence of superiority. You know, many a times we consider ourselves to be better than everybody else, and we spend the whole life telling people that they are insignificant. And that is a form of violence that we never understand, but it has as lasting and sordid effects on the victim as a bullet or a bomb would have. Because you are now playing a psychologically violent game. So non-violence without humility is not, non-violence at all. And so we have to understand all those forms of violence and non-violence, and then only can we achieve that ideal plane of a superior in understanding. And the emphasis is on understanding. Superior is just to show that you elevate yourself, because when that understanding happens, superiority does not matter to you. It doesn't matter whether you are bigger than somebody else, or your stature has increased or things. Because that humility, and if you look at all the great people who we revere today, the greatest virtue that they had was their humility, their humbleness, their ability to reduce themselves to an absolute zero. This is the most difficult challenge that we mortals face, because somewhere or the other, consciously I'm making an effort that I've got to be better than the other three panelists in all my answers. And I'm not willing to accept the fact that on certain issues I may really not know the answers. But I will never admit to that. Because how can I do that? But I don't realize that when I'm doing that out of my own ego, I'm being violent, because I am creating a false image of myself. And anything that is false is violent. And so, and it's a lie. So truth and nonviolence both go out of the window at that point of time. So I think that unless we strive to reach to that plane where I used to have somebody I used to cherish a lot in my youth, and he used to always talk to me about nothingness. And I turned it into a joke. I said, yeah, I used to call him my nothing uncle, because he used to always talk to me about nothingness, and he would say, we have to achieve nothingness. I never understood what he meant by that. Now, when I realized that, I realized that nothingness meant absolute humility, reducing oneself to completely a person devoid of a status, a person devoid of an ego, a person who can be like water, take the shape of whichever utensil it is poured into, or take the color of whichever dye that is put in it, and yet retain the property of being water, never change that property. And so, truth and nonviolence to me is that state of achievement.
Thank you. Thank you, Tushar. That is indeed very deep. And I believe one of the things that really came out was how transparent you are about what is going on in your mind. You do not flinch even a little bit when you say that I am thinking like this, but you are also sharing it with people. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Sister Jayanti, your work has been around nonviolence as a way of life that many people have been taught what it means to be nonviolent. At the Brahma Kumaris, people have also considered that they have had a nonviolent way of living. What does it mean for you to be truthful and to have a definition about nonviolence? What does it mean for you?
To me, there's two different levels of truth. In a sense, there's truth related to the physical reality of this world. And so, yes, it's true to say that we are in different parts of the world and so on and so on. But there's another truth, which is the truth which is absolute, in which it's the being who is the divine, the supreme, who is the truth, who's able to reveal to us the ultimate absolute truth. And so the journey of life is to be able to come into that connection and relationship and be able to develop that state of yoga in which I begin to have a glimpse of that eternal truth, the absolute truth. And of course, on the external practical level of truth and reality also comes into the picture honesty. How honest am I with myself? And like Brother Tushar was saying, in a very honest and transparent way, what is it that's going on in my mind? Do I recognize what I'm doing to myself? And so honesty comes into that aspect of the truth that relates to human life and activity. And nonviolence, I loved the definitions that you offered us, Brother Tushar, because absolutely in agreement with those. A very simple definition that I came across from a Gandhian writer, somebody who's written books on Gandhi Ji, and that was do no harm. And so what is it that I'm doing to myself? Am I harming myself? Am I clear enough in my awareness and understanding that to lie is harming myself? Never mind what it's doing to anyone else, but I'm harming myself. And so if you translate that, firstly, what is it that I'm doing to myself? I let myself get addicted to things that are harmful to me. And so physically, emotionally, spiritually, let me do no harm to myself. And then, of course, it extends out to people. And am I following that path of truth so that I do not give sorrow on any level to anyone around me? Violence is the physical extreme state, but all the subtle things that have already been spoken of. But yes, are my words harmful for another? Or are my words uplifting and encouraging for another? But also, nonviolence refers absolutely to our relationship with all the other creatures of the world, the universe. And so what is my diet? What are the clothes that I wear? What is it that I'm doing to the physical planet that I walk and live on? We talk about Mother Earth, and yet we've been violating our mother in a huge, violent, aggressive way. We've been exploiting Mother Earth without understanding the laws of nature and why we're in the situation we are with such drastic situations of climate change and climate disasters. They're using the word now, not just climate crisis, but climate emergency. Well, who made it happen? It wasn't unseen, unknown forces and energies or beings out there. It was us, me and everybody else on the planet with me. And so can I reverse that now? And can I, instead of harming nature, harming creatures, can I now bring back into my life the concept of no harm, but rather respect, respecting nature and treading lightly on the earth so that I'm not harming the earth on any level, but also respecting each and every one of the species that populate this planet. And in fact, they have a right to be on this planet, not even as much as me, but maybe even more than me, because they're not taking, they're in a cycle of giving and giving and giving. And so to understand nonviolence means to be able to have a life in which I have respect for the self, respect for my body, respect for you, respect for each and every human being, respect for animals, and respect for nature itself.
Very beautiful. Thank you, Sister Jayanti. That was indeed very deep. And moving on to our third panelist, we have Avni with us. Avni, how do you define truth and non-violence? What do they mean for you?
When you hear the terms truth and non-violence, it was always the third term was Gandhi Ji. And since I started the Charkha movement in 2014, 13, 12. So 2012 onwards, a lot of people, because I do Charkha, they relate my actions with his ideology. And I start with the first sentence that I really have a love-hate relation with Gandhiji, because as a child, I really never liked to read about Gandhiji, because like you living something and you are being reading something or taught something. So I think it was an inner conflict which was going on for me for many years. For me, I never had that kind of patience to even read and understand. I'm not a very good reader, so I'm a visual and tactile person. So I grasp my knowledge from actions of others and for me. And for me, the biggest turn came for me to understand these two terms very, very clearly was after my father's death. I think that was a time when I really started getting into acting on these terms rather than just reading and understanding. Because for me, I think I'm experimenting in my own life with these two terms these days. And for me, like how Tusharji very well explained that we are very, we have our own convenient truth. And for me, it was there. And for me, I think I've been listening to a lot of philosophers these days. I've been practicing a lot of spiritual practices. So what I am trying to understand now, and what I've understood now, is first truth is about myself, my feelings, how I am living my life. So that is something, and then in any actions or any incidents in life, how do I keep my previous experiences aside? How do I remove the clouds of my own imaginations and expectation aside and see the reality? And I think for me, this is still a journey started. I'm at a very, very initial stage to even talk about it. There's a lot of knowledge everywhere, but the only knowledge that will help, which you will implement in your life, and I think that hit me hard to my heart. And from that day, anything I do, and I start looking at that, is this kind of true? You need to really get into the layers of what is being shown to you, what you are listening, and how you are responding to it with your own clouds. So I'm trying to remove all the clouds aside and really get into the reality. Like my sister lately kind of pointed this out to me, that I have been I had a habit of walking away from people who are really trying to show me who really I am. And I'm confronting that. So I think for me, my actions have been very nonviolent, though I have not physically been abusing anybody. And also thought-wise, living in a family, you don't like somebody or you really don't agree with somebody on day-to-day life, and how do you accept it without being without being violent, and just trying to be non-violent with your mind to start with. Because for me, I think I've started understanding myself and changing that aspect of me, not being violent from my side first, in terms of my thoughts, uh, my ideas about others, judging people, and trying to behave in different way with different people, with my own clouds. So I'm for me, I think removing all the clouds and living. And for me, I think I'm on a path of learning what is truth and nonviolence. So that is what is lately I would say, my most important aspects every day. When I sit at night before I sleep, I think what was a violent part of me today.
Thank you. I think I'm reminded of Bapu's book, his autobiography, which said, "My experiments with truth." And I think there is no harm done when you say that I'm also experimenting with it. So good luck with that.
Thank you.
And I'm pretty sure that your experiments will lead certain fruits that we all would benefit from in our own lives, the way that we deal with things and the things that we work on. Just to get an overview about how Mahatma's life has been. We've all observed Mahatma's life through books or cinema or stories that we have heard from our teachers or friends or family or from wherever. I'm pretty sure that millions of people on this planet have been touched by Mahatma's life. How has that influenced you? What in his life connects to your way of living? And I would like to get a quick gist of what it really means to you. How were you influenced? What was your exposure like? When did you find out about Mahatma Gandhi and how that resonated with you? That is something that I would like to get from all three of you. Probably answers in maybe 2 or 3 minutes from each one of you. So we'd like to start with Sister Jayanti. How were you first introduced to Mahatma Gandhi? Where did you first hear about him or see about him, or how did you come about?
Growing up in London, I wasn't so much exposed to ideas about Gandhi, and the Indian community here in the 50s and 60s was minuscule, literally. I was the only Indian girl in school, right all the way through school, right till the very end. And so I wasn't so stimulated by the thought of Gandhi or what he represented. Neither was I on a spiritual path, nor was I on a philosophical path. And then my spiritual journey began, and I began to understand more about his secrets. And I have to say that I happened to be in the USA when I actually asked a group of people, have you heard of Mahatma Gandhi? And this was in Tampa, in Florida. And a group of 100 people, and none of them had heard of Gandhi. I wanted to give an example from his life. And something happened very dramatically the following year. The film Gandhi was released. And by chance, I happened to be in Tampa again. And this time, of course, everyone had heard about Gandhi. So it was a very beautiful moment for me to see that the world was now appreciating who was this amazing individual. And for me personally, what really touched me was the fact that he understood the value of brahmacharya. And he knew that energy taken just randomly and used randomly would be of not much service. But if he could have a discipline in his life and restraint in his life and channel energy towards a higher goal, a higher purpose, that purpose would be achieved. And so I'm tremendously impressed by the fact that this is something he understood and practiced in his own life. And of course, on a spiritual path, you also very much recognize the value of this. And the other thing that impressed me and touched me has been his total dedication, his single-minded purpose. Everything else was secondary, but Ram Raj, to establish Ram Raj, or at least to move in that direction through freedom for India, independence for India, would be that journey that would make Ram Raj happen. It yet has to happen, of course, but we are still here. We can still make it happen. But that idea of absolute determination with one vision, one focus to make that a reality. And so I've taken a lot of inspiration from that.
Thank you, Sister Jayanti. And I'm pretty sure that everybody here would agree, and anybody who's watching this program would agree, that Richard Attenborough's Gandhi kind of introduced Mahatma Gandhi to the world in an unprecedented way, and nobody would ever believe, if that film was not made, that there was a human being who really walked right there in blood and flesh with us on this planet. Tushar, you come from the family of Gandhi, and of course, there is a legacy that you carry. How do you see that Gandhi's life influenced you? How does it connect to your way of living today?
Fortunately for me, I was introduced to Bapu before I came to know the Mahatma. And so the introduction was much more believable, because the persona of the Mahatma is very convenient. It's very convenient to disbelieve the Mahatma and make an excuse saying, that's a divine character and we can never be like that. And so I also in my life, I could never ever identify with the Mahatma. There was a lot of disbelief that was associated with that persona of the Mahatma, but Bapu was very believable. The journey of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, Bapu, was a very believable journey, and the evolution that happened was a very believable, realistic evolution, and that fascinated me all my life. We may not end up at the destination or the level that he achieved in his life, but we strive to walk on that path. Wherever we reach, we will be better than when we started. And that journey of his life is so for me, the experiments were the more important aspect of that human being than the result that those experiments achieved for him, because he achieved those results from those experiments. It doesn't mean that everybody would be able to achieve the same results in their, even if they were to carry out those experiments themselves. And so for me, the experiments have been much more believable and much more inspiring in my life. And the realization that there is no destination. You never arrive at the destination. The only destination you manage to reach is death, when everything ends for you. And what is important is, at what point of evolution have you reached before you eventually reach that destination of death where the journey ended. And so that aspect of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi has always been more inspiring for me than anything else. And I have a little bit, of course, I totally accept that it was Richard Attenborough's Gandhi that brought Bapu back into the conscience of people worldwide. But there is a more practical example of Gandhi working in a place where he would least have been expected to inspire or work. And that was the inspiration that Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. had from Bapu, and how he molded that entire civil rights movement. Because you must remember that while Dr. King was molding the civil rights movement into a non-violent, passive resistance movement, there was a very great influence to take it away towards a violent conflict. And it was running parallel. And yet, Dr. King remained steadfast to somebody who he had never met, who he had never seen in person, somebody who was introduced to him by a third party, somebody whose writings inspired him. And that inspiration was so great that he changed the entire characteristic of the mindset of his people. A brutally victimized race of people in a country, in a nation that even today believes in the caliber of the gun that they carry more than the caliber of their own spiritual awakening. In that country, to utilize the weapon, we started this program calling nonviolence a weapon, and so I'm going to use that term for it, using the weapon of nonviolence to bring about a change of uh, justice in a society. I think that was a remarkable inspiration that Bapu achieved after his death. You must remember, Dr. King discovered Bapu after Bapu was dead. He didn't even discover him during the lifetime. And for somebody to be able to inspire somebody else so far apart, distance wise, cultural wise, race wise, in every which way, is the remarkable ability of that man, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. He said before he died, a few months before he died, he said, if my faith burns bright and I'm steadfast to it, I will be speaking eternally, inspiring eternally. I will be speaking from beyond my funeral pyre also. And that is the remarkable achievement that man did. That he continues to speak. It's 75 years since he is not in our midst. And yet, we cannot deny him. We may criticize him, we may abuse him, we may worship him, but nobody can say I'm indifferent to that person. Because that indifference also acknowledges that person's presence. And to me, so that is the eternal quality of that man. And I like to, my mission in life is to free him from that bondage of the Mahatma. I, I, I'll be very frank. I hate the Mahatma because the Mahatma makes him impossible, and that negates his whole life because his whole life was the message of being possible to become like him. And so I don't want to bring that impossible identity into the picture at all.
Very beautiful, Tushar. And as you say these words, I'm reminded of an incident uh, when people look up to someone, many times they deify that person. It becomes almost unattainable. And just to follow in somebody's footsteps, it has to be something that is practical, something that is real, and where people could actually do that.
See, that's where we put all the statues on a high pedestal. So the height itself sort of smothers us and tells you us you're right down there. Don't even look eye to eye with this person. And that's where the distance comes.
True, indeed. We have Avni who also believes, and she has spoken saying that she has had a love-hate relationship with the Mahatma. Very quickly, Avni, maybe in a minute or two, I would like to ask you, how has Mahatma's life or Bapu's life or Gandhi's life, however you would like to call him, has influenced you? How does his life connect to your way of living today?
So as I told, since childhood, I have skipped every lesson of every subject where Mahatma Gandhi was mentioned, because I think now when Tushar Bhai speaks about him and his being Mahatma, I can resonate with it. That I think I resonate with real people. I resonate with resilient people. I resonate with people who believe in whatever they are doing, good, bad, ugly, but they are people. And I think as a person, as an individual, I cannot resonate with God. I cannot resonate with something which I have not seen or something which I have not felt. So for me, I think my real encounter with people trying to make me live like Gandhi started when I started the Charkha movement. So the moment I started Charkha, it was purely with the intention to revive a hand skill which is dying from India, which is going from India. And I think I had not had the slightest of an inclination to do something Gandhian. I would like to confess this here. It was purely, and it is still purely, the idea that people need to use their hands, and there is a dimension which Gandhiji has explored with Charkha, which is very much relevant to any time. So even today, it's relevant whether in India or abroad. But I think for me, that encounter started since 2012. So people, first thing when I would say Charkha, they would expect me to wear khadi. A second thing, when they see charkha, they said, why am I wearing a denim or a t-shirt, or why am I not wearing a sari? So when people started fixing their ideas about Gandhian ideology or something which they think is Gandhian on me, I think I again started kind of rebelling against it, that to spin charkha, you don't really need to wear khadi. And if you really want to wear khadi, first earn your own yarn, like make your own yarn, and then talk about wearing khadi. Um, because it's easy to kind of talk about things, but it's tough to walk that path. And for me, I think that is one aspect which I'm still kind of living every day. Because a lot of people, when they earlier I used to be known as a pot lady, because I work with traditional potters and my community potters, and now people say that charkha lady. So I think it's kind of comparing me with Gandhi, and I think it's totally wrong. I'm a human being trying to revive a skill. And then one thing what influences me now is the simplicity of Gandhi, because for me, I see him as a grandfather in India rather than a Mahatma, I would say. Because I have lived life in villages. I have lived life in villages. There was no electricity. So um, and then I have kind of lived a little bit of materialistic life in Ahmedabad and traveling abroad and all. And then I've confronted all these different aspects of life, about being greedy, about making more money, and I need this and I need that, and kind of accumulating thing. And then you finally realize what actually you need to live a decent life. You really don't need to accumulate. And I think for me, that entire circle of life, of learning, is kind of come back to simplicity. Because my parents were like that, my grandparents were like that, and I think everybody in our village have lived that life, and I have lived that life. And I think that's the beauty of simplicity.
Indeed, I agree that there is more to grab from that, and where we see Gandhi's work and his life and his message resonates with each one of us in the fields of work that we do. And in today's talk, this is an opportunity that we want to bring in to identify, um, to focus and to spotlight what it really means today to be using truth and nonviolence in the current world that we live in, the people that are around us, for the planet, and of course, peace that we all aim for. Um, Moving on to the main conversation about the issues that we see today in the world. To start off, Tushar, you are a socio-political activist of peace issues, involved in advocating, spreading Gandhian values and principles to address the problems and the different dilemmas that the humankind faces today, especially in the contemporary world. How relevant do you see truth and nonviolence are for the people of today?
survive, we can do without truth and nonviolence, because I think that there is not the supports of true of life and civilization. They are actually the most vital ingredients, like blood and oxygen is for life, for human or any living thing. Truth and nonviolence are for humanity and civilization to survive. And so I don't think we can ever be without it. As I said, we can we can adopt convenient versions of them, but when we do that, in the long run, we have seen how it harms us and destroys what we so much want to preserve. That at one point of time, look at our greed. Our greed collectively has brought us to a state where today our existence is under threat. And the threat is not that we will be destroyed, because anything that is created will has to be destroyed sometime or the other. That's the cycle. If it wasn't, then there wouldn't be a cycle in any case. But the fact that, do we today know? I was talking to a scientist, and we got to talk about doomsday, and I asked that scientist. I said, I know that you have a doomsday clock, and when there is a critical thing, you move the hands to inch on millimeter towards that doomsday point. So where are we there? When is that doomsday happening? I asked the scientist, and he said, Tushar, doomsday will happen. That's inevitable. It's going to happen. One of these days, we're all going to be, life as we know it will be extinguished. That's the cycle that keeps going on. He says, what is dangerous and what is threatening is the point of no return. Because, when you're rushing towards that doomsday, there is one point where you jump off the cliff, and then there is nothing you can do to get back on top of that cliff. And he says that is the greatest unknown. We never know when we jumped off that cliff till we hit the bottom with a bang and life is extinguished. And he said, even in the present crisis, what is the biggest threat is, have we crossed that doomsday? So everything we do now is immaterial because we already passed that point of no return. That is what happens when you abandon truth and peace and nonviolence and unity. And that is where, even if we have gone past the point of no return, at least we should try and slow down our fall towards our doom. And that is where we need to keep harping on these values and explaining their importance. And that is what I do, because along with truth and nonviolence and peace, what is most critical is unity of life. Unless all life forms unite and say, we are going to ensure that all of us exist for a much longer time than, I know we can't exist for eternity, but at least eternity to me is my lifetime. And at least in that lifetime, if we can unite, respect each other, and say, yes, I understand that you have as much right over the share of what this nature gives us as much as I do. And I will respect and honor your share of it. In return, I expect you to respect and honor my share of it. And we will not sort of, try to get a bigger slice of the pie while the other person is not capable of it. And that lesson that Bapu taught humanity, or it was taught from the time of Krishna or Buddha or Jesus or Muhammad or whatever, whoever, we can have a simple or name somebody. The fact is, they all preach the same thing. And unless we recognize that and understand that, the impact of our destruction is going to be will take, will sort of shock us. How did this happen? Because we generally wake up when something hits us badly and shakes us up if it doesn't kill us. That terminal speed that we achieve in our lust for life, the greed that we have sort of convinced ourselves that that is life. Life is being greedy. Snatch as much as you can. In doing that, we are actually harming our own lives. And unless we understand that, it will be peace and non-violence will be just mere words and nothing else about it. So that is what at least I strive to do in my life. Acquire the knowledge to understand the levels of these, the depths of these ideas and philosophy, and then try to explain that in as simple a manner to people. And then in doing that, stand up for those values. Act if necessary to preserve those values. Take a stand. We many a times convince ourselves that we are insignificant, we can't make a difference. But the real difference only happens by the actions of individuals. Because it is the actions of individuals that inspire the collective. And then that comes about. And that's what Gandhi, all his life, when Avni talked about Ekla Chalo, that was what Gandhi's life was all about. Identifying the path, identifying the destination, and not waiting for company on that. Just starting off on that journey. We get intimidated by the concept of being alone. We don't understand that most of the path breaking journeys happen when the voyager has ventured alone on that journey. Whether it is a physical journey, or it is a spiritual journey, or it is a journey of enlightenment.
Very beautiful, Tushar, and I'm pretty sure when you say this, this is something that is coming out from each one of you, that it is not about looking at someone as someone who's on a high pedestal, but also to use that as an example in one's own personal life and use that as a tool for self-transformation, of moving and making ourselves into better people. Sister Jayanti, coming to you, you have been known as an emissary of peace. You've also um, guided people on the journey of spiritual growth. Also, when you look at the world today, you have advocated and spoken on different issues that the world faces today: poverty, hunger, climate change. Where do you see the values of truth and nonviolence uh, that Mahatma Gandhi advocated? Would they be of any help in solving the issues that the planet faces today?
Absolutely. In fact, I don't think there is any other solution to the problems of the world. If I were to ask for a sort of global solution to the global problems or crises, I would say it's spirituality that is the answer. But spirituality is such a big, broad umbrella term. Where do you begin? And so the translation of spirituality for me is truth and nonviolence. And with that, of course, peace. And so truth means to me to come back to the original eternal qualities of the self. And that is the true being. And we've forgotten about this. We get involved in all the externals of life, and that's led to materialism and consumerism. And we think that that's what life is about, and the greed that Tushar spoke. But in fact, when I come back to the truth, the first truth reality is to know myself. And when I know myself as that inner being, the spiritual being, I'm beginning my journey towards truth. And the more I'm able to maintain that spiritual consciousness of who I am as a spiritual being, then I'm able to move closer to those original true qualities of love, of truth, of peace, of purity and joy, which are the ingredients that every human soul is actually made up of. That is the truth. These are our original qualities. And so truth is the foundation of what I have to do in my life today. And with that also, of course, then comes the aspect of no harm to anyone, non-violence. And really, if I look at the state of the planet, both in terms of the people that inhabit the planet and what we've done to each other with the genocides and the things that are going on, post-truth, we call this the post-truth era. Well, it's been left behind. Truth has been forgotten. And so we have the situation of such hatred and violence and attacks that are going on in so many different ways. And so coming back to the awareness of the original inner being and the truth of that, then these qualities of goodness can start manifesting and we can interact with those qualities once more. And yes, it's a fact that there is eternity. Things don't finish, cut, end. No, there's something next, something next. There's always something further. And so I think that at this point of the evolution of the human species, it has to be a return to truth and non-violence and peace. Otherwise, the things are going to go through a huge, huge collapse, not even chaos. We're at the time of chaos now, but we're headed towards collapse. But I think that the goodness of the human spirit can once again recognize what is truth and come back to that awareness and manifest it. Non-violence, of course, how can we live in a world on a planet in which there's constant violence against the self, against people, animals, and nature? People have been talking about change of diet at the climate change conferences in the COP. I've been attending these conferences since 2009 every year. And although some people had the recognition of a change of diet being necessary to be able to keep temperatures down across the globe, people weren't ready to speak about it. It's only in the last couple of years that people have been ready to talk about the impact of diet on the warming of the planet. And dairy farming, meat farming, agriculture generally, all of these things have created a huge, huge impact. And if I say I have to be nonviolent and I can only begin with myself, I can't preach it to others. And so when I begin the path of nonviolence myself, I begin to change, others see me, and maybe they'll be inspired. Or maybe even if not inspired, they'll start asking questions and their awareness can grow about what is the impact of our acts of violence, not only on animals and nature, but the entire planet. And of course, the comeback of that is the violence against human beings. And if you see what's happening in terms of climate change, we are absolutely at the brink. The tipping points that they spoke about 5 years ago and thought that it will take 20, 25 years to cross those tipping points, most of those tipping points have been crossed already. And so now the answer for me is coming back to the truth of who we actually are, eternal beings, souls, with that spark of goodness within us, and to emerge that goodness and start behaving in that awareness of that which is inherent within us, which is peace. This is why we say Om Shanti. Om, I am peace. It is my original state of being. It's not something I'm striving for. It's there, but I forget myself. I forget and get trapped by the external. And so coming back to who I am, there is peace, there is truth, and I follow the path of nonviolence.
Thank you very much, Sister Jayanti. I see there is a great resonance between what Tushar said and what you were saying in terms of how we have a great responsibility in terms of if we bring about a change in ourselves, if we were to work together, if we start with ourselves, with what Avni was saying earlier on about Ekla Chalo, to start with yourself, and when you bring about this change, you can see that change in the world. And it is one of the quotes that Mahatma Gandhi is attributed to, that the change that I want to see in the world has to begin from me. Avni, Sister Jayanti was talking about the COP conferences, the environment conferences, especially on climate change. Sustainability is a word that has got relevance today. Your work featured in a book that was titled Parampara, detailing India's climate-friendly and sustainable practices. That was released by the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, in the Paris conference COP21. When we talk about sustainability, do you see there is a connect between sustainability and nonviolence?
Absolutely. I think in India, we lived a life which was sustainable. And for some reasons and for various reasons, we have been pulled towards the other side, where we have become materialistic and goal oriented in certain kind of financial ways, and we have been very greedy. I think in my life, what I have seen is I have seen both the extremes, and I think people are talking about sustainability, but uh, talking doesn't make any difference. Acting will make. So, in terms of non-violence, when we talk about sustainability, we are non-violence. I think that's the solution, because um, in India, how the life was, when you mentioned about this book Parampara, it's a compilation of different aspects of Indian living, be it architecture, be it festivals, be it food, be it living spaces, be it the clothing and rituals and religions and everything. I think the holistic way of living in India, in different parts of India, was very much uh, connected with the nature. And we used to live like that. And somewhere, I think there was a doubt in our mind that this is old, this is not relevant, we need to be modern, or we need to. I don't know where this idea might have come from, but I think that thing has pulled us apart from away from our own real great treasure of living sustainable life. And uh, local, like the term vocal for local is like these days very trendy word. Sustainability is a very trendy word, but I think living that life is more important. And as a sister clearly said, that we have already crossed that bridges. We have been having this international conferences, national level conferences, where we try to compile the knowledge, but where are we implementing? Let us start implementing that, and let us start being non-violent to nature, to people around us, and believe in our own values, believe in our own uh, knowledge resource, which is like coming from our grandfathers or great grandfathers, they living life. Uh, if we start implementing that, I think then we'll automatically become non-violent in a lot of way. Because I remember my father always used to say, and a lot of people would say that you can't live like that. Is he would say, don't value money so much. It's necessary. It's not so important. But your relation with people and your relation with nature around is more important. That is sustainable. And I think uh, those values somewhere lived in my childhood has brought me back to the same lifestyle, the sustainable lifestyle, which I'm trying to live now. So for me, I think non-violence should be part of our life, and it should come from the families to the children rather than we waiting for educational institutions or big international organizations trying to implement that through various ways.
Very beautiful. Very beautiful. Indeed, I see what Sister Jayanti was saying, and what you're saying is also something that the people can see there is a bridge between sustainability and how we live today and what we need to do. On the last note, I think there are more questions to ask. There is more that we can take from this conversation. But looking at the time frames that we have, I would like to end on a final note where I would like to take a message from each one of you, starting with Tushar.
I don't consider myself qualified to give messages to anybody because, as Bapu said, messages should be lived, and messages should be an inspiration from what people say and not merely from words, because words are transient. And so if at all I was to give a message to anyone and leave them with a message, it would be look within, find all these qualities within oneself, because they're all there. When it's our makeup, it's the human makeup, and all these things are ingredients of that makeup. Just we smother certain things because we don't want them to be manifest. So have the courage to look inwards, have the courage to admit it, discover those qualities within us, and let them slowly emerge. It won't happen like a throw of a switch, but it can. If it happens gradually, it will be more sustainable. So I think if I were to give a message to end this message, would be discover the Gandhi within yourself.
Firstly, I would like to say that I'm humbled to be part of this conversation. I would say that I'm no person to give any message, but I would say that the youth and the young people should be respectful and crazy craving about the knowledge which our elders have, the life they have lived. And when you really care about sustainability and earth and peace, just start living that life. It will be uncomfortable to start with. It will bring you to the phase where you want to again close your eyes and say, no, how I was good. You want to go back to your comfort level, but ultimately you will reach to that level that you yourself will contribute to the sustainability and peace around you. I think it's very clear. You start with yourself, and people observe you. And I always all my programs are designed around three terms: is exposure, experience, and acceptance. We all have exposure of a lot of things. Start experiencing that, and there's no doubt we all will accept. We all are peaceful beings from inside, and we want that. So let's start from us.
Sister Jenny, we understand that today, as we see the world, peace it has become a prized possession. And even the peace that we have today, what we see is very fragile, whether it is between countries or communities in a nation, or just in our own households, in our own boundaries of the walls that we live in. What is your message? What should people do to bring that peace inside their lives?
It's actually echoing what my brother Tushar has been saying, because peace does lie within, but I don't give myself time to be able to look at it and feel it and allow it to flourish and express itself. And so I would suggest that making time for yourself is a priority. We get occupied with so many things outside that we forget that everything starts from here. And so making time for the self, especially first thing in the morning, so that I'm putting my compass straight, so that then I'm headed in the right direction through the day. And so peace does lie within. It truly does. It's not out there on the beach or in the forest or somewhere else, or in a sheet of paper that's been signed by countries. Peace starts with me, and I am that being of peace. But I just need to make time to be able to look within and to nurture that and allow it to develop and grow.
Thank you. Very beautiful. I see how we had curated this conversation, bringing all three of you together. I had no idea that there would be this great level of cohesion in all of your thoughts and what you have spoken today. And it is amazing to find people who have come together having the same kind of thoughts, the same kind of ideals, and the same kind of ways of working to making the world a better place, of making ourselves better human beings, and guiding people wherever we find. And indeed, it has been an absolute pleasure listening to you and being fortunate of sitting here and asking these questions on behalf of all of our friends who are watching it on various different platforms where they are watching. Thank you so much to all three of you. First of all, to Tushar Gandhi for making it possible and taking time out. And thank you to Sister Jayanti for joining us all the way from London, and Sister Avni Varia, and all the way from Ahmedabad. Thank you so much for joining. Before I
just want to say a big thank you to everyone, because it's been very beautiful hearing you all and having the opportunity to take in some of your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Yes.
Thank you to all three of you once again. And before we close, I'm reminded of this beautiful bhajan that Bapu liked, Vaishnav Janto. I believe when we listen to Vaishnav Janto, there is so much message in that and so much inspiration that the world needs today. And I would request Sister Jayanti to lead us through a meditation, a silent meditation of reflection of what you said recently, Sister Jayanti, about the peace is something that we are looking outside actually lies within, and we are these beings of peace. So in just a few moments, so that we all send out those vibrations of peace, of these loving thoughts of peace to everyone around the world.
Thank you for the opportunity. Just going on an inner journey, coming to the awareness of my own inner world and seeing that the quality of my thinking has changed as I listened to each one and I heard about sustainability, nonviolence, truth, and peace. My own thoughts gradually slow down, and I come to the awareness of these qualities within myself. Going deeper and deeper within, I come to that space of peace, the sacred space that no one else can enter, a space that has peace. And in this awareness of peace, it becomes more and more natural peace belongs to me. It is my own inner property. And I wish to share peace with all those around me. In a very conscious way, we send out peace to the people we know who need peace the most. But beyond that, we send out peace to all those we don't know, who also are in need of peace. We send out peace to every human being on the planet. The power of our thoughts can change the self, and the power of our thoughts can restore harmony and peace in the world. We send out thoughts of peace to all forms of life, that they may feel safe and be comforted. We send out peace to the elements. I hold peace in my awareness, and even as I come back to the things around me here in the physical dimension, I keep this awareness of peace so that peace guides my thoughts, my words, and above all, my actions. Om Shanti. Namaste.
Experience that reservoir of peace inside, where we all see how much we can all gain by just going within. And by doing that, we are giving out so much, and we become these great donors. Thank you once again to all three of you for joining us today and sharing all your thoughts. It was wonderful having you all. Thank you once again from all of our friends who are watching. Thank you.